course. So basically, Ayushi, you can hear me now? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, good. So what I was saying that this will be my last lecture on genome editing class, and from next week, Dr. Raj will be taking your lectures specifically on application parts. So, and before I forget again, so there was one question asked by I think Amit, and he asked about zinc finger nucleases and how zinc finger nucleases enter into the nucleases. We did not study anything regarding that. So I have uploaded one article on that, and specifically reading that article. Um, Seems that there is no specific sequence as such for zinc finger proteins to go into the nucleases, and in their experiment what they did, they deleted a lot of the finger domains, and specifically they found that the first two finger domains are important for nuclear signals. But this is again specific to what kind of nuclear or zinc finger nucleases they and zinc finger proteins they are talking about. So this was in Kruper like fingers. So all the zinc fingers behave very differently, and they have a very large class of family and wherever they are coming from. So in that specific paper which I have uploaded, so they have mentioned that the first two finger domains are important for nuclear signal localization, and also the whole finger is not dependent on the zinc finger binding motifs, for example C2H2 domains. So they are not dependent for their localization signal on these. But again, in their discussion section, if you see, they have written that other zinc finger proteins, there are some which also depends on the C2H2 domains, which actually function as a metal binding domains, and they also is important for nuclear localization. So as such, I did not find very consensus or conserved sequences for nuclear localization, specifically in zinc finger proteins. So what they believe, the polar present in the zinc finger, they could be important for nuclear, because they have the nuclear binding property also. So they could be playing a role. So it's not entirely clear, Amit. So you can go through that paper, at least the abstract, and can find out that whether it is of your interest or not. But considering my course, I think these things will not be asked, because we will go through the course syllabus and whatever was taught in the slides. Okay. So now coming to today's lecture, uh, what we have seen so far is these three specifically tools, what we have studied in detail, starting from your restriction enzyme FOC1 nuclease or for FOC1 domains. We saw that how FOC1 C terminals was important in cleaving your DNA unspecifically, and that C terminus domain was used, and later it was found that this dimer interfaces are present, and even much later by 2010-12 they actually figured out how to improve the dimerization sequences, because the problem was the homodimers were forming. So specifically to conduct the heterodimers, especially for FOC1, because only your heterodimers, one from zinc finger right and one from zinc finger left, should form the dimer for targeting specific DNA sequences here. So these domains were improved, and then we also saw in detail about zinc finger nucleases, how the zinc finger domains contact their DNA with the help of three important residues, 3 to 4 residues, and one-to-one contact between their amino acid to base pairs. And utilizing these important DNA binding domains, one can construct at least 3 to 4 residues of your zinc finger on the right side, and then 3 to 4 on the left side, so that you target unique sequences, and wherever you want to cut, you can attach your FOC1 enzyme that will serve the purpose, right? Similarly, we have seen your talent where it comes from. It started, the story started with Xenopus laevis, and later it was found that this kind of transcription factors are present in other domains, specifically from plants. The talent is coming from the plant, and this AVR proteins, effector proteins, they infect plants, and if you have the resistance gene, then the plant survives. So this kind of study actually gave them the talon sequences, because after crystal structure, the code was realized that NG binds to T sequences, and similarly they are unique 12th and 13th motif, which are unique for binding, and specifically the 13th residue form the base pairs, specific site specific base pairs contact with your target DNA sequences. So basically all these tools one can actually now synthesize artificially with your tailor-made proteins, and you can target any particular given sequences of your interest. And this is these all two tools has been vastly utilized in the system. If you see the Drosophila system mouse and other knockouts, so you can see all this in applications also. But the unique thing about these two is they both are protein guided, and every time you want to, target a particular sequence, you will have to tailor-made your protein, synthesize, and then purify and ligate it with the FOC1 enzymes, like that. So, but the now coming to RNA guided, or so to say ribonucleocomplex guided machinery, where you have the Cas9, that is the one protein we are talking about here, type 2 system. So in this case, we have seen it is the whole system is highly efficient. What you need is basically two things. One is tracer guide RNA, that means tracer is linked with your guide RNA, and the Cas9 protein. So basically with these two important proteins, you are able to, guide your Cas9 enzyme to your targeted sequences. For example, with this guide RNA, you can target specifically sequences complementarity to the target protospacer as shown here. Whereas if you change this guide RNA, the Cas9 will be active at other positions. So basically, it is as simple as forming your primers. And if you know how to form a primer, you will be able to form a guide RNA. There are some constraint in this. That means you should have a PAM sequence, especially when you are talking about type 2. This NGG motifs you should look for, and then you can look for what is the target DNA sequences, right? So based on this, one can say that the CRISPR is highly efficient, easy, simple, and affordable, and that is the reason why every lab actually utilizes this tool to bring about the required changes in the experiment or whatever tools they are using. So now moving further, because we have seen how the tools work in targeting a sequence, we haven't seen what happens after the breakage or whatever you want to do. So if you do not want to, cleave both ends, especially in the Cas9s, you can actually mutate either one nuclease or the other nuclease, or even both nucleases, so that you just have a targeting sequence or binding proteins which is bind to that particular. And then you can also add the fluorophore, so that at least you see where is the target target sequence. Similarly, here you can actually modify the whole talon into lot of different utilizations. Either you cleave, or either you add the repressor activator, and there are a lot of variations is available in the market and also in the publications you can see. Okay. So now moving further, that what happens after a break. See, a break can be exogenous or endogenous in DNA. And basically in normal condition, it is estimated that a cell experiences up to 10 to the power 5 spontaneous DNA lesions. And among this, only 10 to 15 are thought to be double stranded breaks, because the double stranded breaks are highly lethal, and cells needs to, come up, or this repair this break as fast as possible. So there are some external sources for double stranded breaks, and there are internal sources. And especially for external sources, these are ionizing radiations like X-rays, cosmic radiations, and there are some chemical agents like IR or methane sulfonate. So these some radiations or chemicals are used, and some internal sources like replication process itself is sometimes halt happens, and other. So in this kind of processes, for example, meiotic recombinations or rearrangements, so all these things will lead into double stranded breaks. But what is the difference between exogenous or endogenous DNA damaging agents and the tools what we are using? See, whenever you have exogenous material which is breaking your DNA, or internal sources which is breaking your DNA, so these are not programmed. So that means wherever the DNA breaks are happening, that can happen anywhere in the DNA, and especially in the recombination process or replication process. So these are not programmable, and these breaks are unintentional. So wherever it is possible, these breaks are coming up. But with our tools, we are actually targeting very specific sequences. That means site specific double standard breaks are created with the help of our tools what we have seen so far. That means zinc finger nucleases, talons, or CRISPR-Cas9 system. So we are interested in double stranded breaks, and creating double stranded breaks, and that too at the specific sequences which we want to actually mutate, and that are intentional in nature. So these are the basic two differences. And what happens once you have a double stranded break or a single stranded break? So we will see these two things: double stranded, single stranded break, and what happens in nature. So in general, so this is a general picture, first slide, where after you have a double stranded break in DNA, these are detected by your sensors present in the cell itself. We are not providing any sensors here. So everything what happens after the break happens inside the cells, and cells tries to repair that break as fast as possible to survive. That is a survival mechanism. So once you have the sensor that are detecting your double standard breaks, then these sensors either recruit different kind of kinases, for example ATM or ATR kinases. So these kinases are actually kind of then phosphorylating another mechanism or another downstream proteins, for example mediators or effectors. So by phosphorylating, it is mediating processes like cell central control, transcription regulation, and apoptosis. So if there is no repair possible, cells undergo apoptosis, so that it doesn't survive anymore, right? So but if there are chances for repair, then it halts the signal for within the cell cycle control. And there are some mediators which actually regulates the transcription mechanism, so that it goes through all the processes, and it gives the cells chance to actually repair whatever deletion or whatever mutation has happened. So it actually every times to try to repair its whole DNA synthesis mechanism, also in replication, and whenever you create any intentional breaks as well. So this is the common mechanism. Once you have some proteins like sensors, some proteins like kinases, and the ultimate which works at the end are the mediators and effectors that controls the cell cycle or transcription regulation or either apoptosis problem. So these are the globular cellular changes that occur after your DNA strand break. Now, DNA strands break can be either single stranded break or the double stranded break, as we are saying. Why we are talking about single stranded break? Because as I have already mentioned, there are two nucleases in Cas9. So when you mutate one, So other is actives. That means you can actually plan Cas9 to mutate or to break at least only one strand, and in this case the second target site. So basically with this kind of system, so we will also see the single stranded break, how it happens. Okay. So basically in single stranded break, so after the standard break is detected, the first sensor protein in this case humans are RPA protein, that is replication protein A. So once you have long 3 prime single stranded breaks are created, these are recognized by some sensor protein and that is attached in this case. Then the single stranded break RPA protein then recruits protein kinases called ATR in single-stranded breaks. Whereas in double-stranded break, the sensor proteins are MRE protein. MRE means MR11, then you have RAD50 and NBS proteins. So these together forms an MRN complexes, and these MRN complexes forms as a sensor in case of double stranded break. And in case of double stranded break, it recruits protein kinases called ATM kinases, and with this it actually then activates the cell cycle kinases system. That means it is giving the chance for cell cycle progression. If there are some progress, then actually it halts the whole system, gives more time for the cells to repair its whole DNA sequences. So these two are the important mechanisms. So now we will see one by one what is the detailed mechanism for single standard break and what is the mechanism for double standard break. So first let's see the single standard break. So first what happens if there is a persistence this RPA protein, repair protein A, then it recruits ATR. This ATR via an adapter known as ATR interacting protein. So this ATR interacting protein binds to both RPA as well as an ATR. So this will then in the presence of RPA single stranded DNA also recruits another complex to this junction of single stranded and the double stranded DNA. So once you have this junction prepared, there is a specialized damage repair specific DNA sliding camp loader. So if you remember your replication classes, there is something similar for, but that is very specific for replication process. And these kind of loader and these kind of sliding clamp is important for your repair specific sliding clamp and sliding clamp loader complexes. Now, this damage specific clamp is a trimeric protein 911, so to say. So that is name comes from RAD9, RAD1 and HUS1. And the loader protein is shown here is the RAD17 and RFC2 to 5 complexes. So you don't need to remember these names here. You just need to, understand that how this happens. There are some kind of sensor, then kinases, and ultimately the processes. But the detailed thing, you don't need to remember anything, right? So what happens this clamp loader sequences at the specific site, it loads the clamp loader, and this job of clamp loader is to recruit another protein, that is topoisomerase binding protein. This is top B1, and then it loads at exactly at the junction. So once this top B1 is loaded, then the whole this ATR becomes active. So that means the kinase becomes active. And the first target for this kinase, it's their neighboring protein. For example, this sliding clamp and the topoisomerase binding protein itself gets phosphorylated. So, once it gets phosphorylated, it enhances the whole signal of breakage. That means this is all they are doing because there is some kind of break and it wants to send the signal to the cell that we have a break and we need time to repair our DNA. So once you have this signal which is amplified with the help of ATR, it recruits cell checkpoints, for example CHK1 here, and it also recruits another protein, for example for repair mechanism you have recruitment of polymerase, TLS polymerase translation and ubiquitinations. So all these things are helping cells to resumption of their DNA synthesis. So whatever break has happened, it will resume the whole process. So this is the whole detailed mechanism for your single standard DNA break. Now coming to double standard breaks. So what happens in double standard breaks and what are the normal player? So you see double standard break, the main issue with the double strand break is there is no undamaged strand. See in single standard you have at least the other strand which will serve as a template for synthesizing the newer strand. Whereas in double stranded break you do not have any template to repair to start the repair mechanism, and it mostly without any template the repair has to happen. So basically it can happen, the repair can happen in three ways. First is non-homologous end joining, which is actually simply joins the two ends of the prominent DNA breaks. Just a minute. So this is the prominent end joining, non-homologous end joining, right? And as I said, it is normally the joining of the two ends, and that is why it is named as a this. And it is prominent in G1 phase, where there is no sister chromatin is absent in that case. The second one is homology directed repair mechanism, which happens during replication phase when a sister chromatid is available as a template. Now the homology directed repair using homologous chromosome. So here it is showing the homologous chromosome as a template, which is actually rare, but it can occur in other cases. So normally when you have a S phase, you have a chromatid, other sister chromatid, which acts as a template. And if this is not the case, in other cases, you might have some chromosome which is quite homologous to the cases. And third one is homologous recombination events, which is adapted for recombination processes, and large conversions are possible in this recombinant. So we will see one by one and in very short detail, that is what are the mechanism, how this repair mechanism happens. So first let's come to non-homologous end joining. So now non-homologous end joining means it is the broken end which is joining together, and for this there is no template is required, and this is only readily available when in the pathway of G1 phase. So this is important for G1 phase of the cell cycle. So as you can see here, the non-homologous end joining can occur in two different methods. One is simply by ligation of the ends. As you can see here, this is the ligation of the end as shown. But before ligation, you have nuclease digestion, and that can remove some of the nucleotides before it is ligating it together. That means you have not the perfect joining, but when it is forming non-homologous end joining, there are certain few nucleotides which are removed in the case of nuclease digestion, and then when you are ligating the two DNA together, that means there is some kind of mutation what you have seen here. And then second method is called resection and then joining. So in second method, what you have, you actually resect some of the sequences from the 5' end or the double stranded breakage here, and you resect until the position you get some kind of micro homology. For example, if you see in this position, you have TGAC, and again in the other complementary sequences you have GTACA. So exactly it is forming some kind of micro homology, because these are very few base pairs, to 4 to 5 base pairs, that is forming homology sequences, and based on that they come together, they align itself in the such a cases, and you have some kind of overhang created. So that means this overhang is then trimmed, and these are removed off with the help of certain enzymes in the cells, and what you get is the repaired DNA. And again, in this case, after trimming and resecting your overhangs, what you get is the ligated material in both the cases, but the most of the nucleotides are removed in this case. All the red portion are important. So for example, if you are causing a non-homologous end joining, a repair mechanism is faulty in nature. As you can see here, already there are some nucleases, nucleotide base pairs which are not present in your DNA sequences. And this is the main program which people use for a knockout system. They use either CRISPR-Cas or zinc finger nucleases with the help of OC1 and TALEN. They target certain sequences and then they allow it to repair. So that means during the repair there are certain portions deleted or removed, and basically your exonic sequences are not giving rise to your protein in sequences. That means there is some fault in your sequences. So with this method, automatically you do not have to do any extra effort. You are deleting some kind of sequences altogether, so that in certain cases if RNA is formed but protein is not formed, and generally if there is certain removal of your nucleotide, already premature termination codons are enhanced in these kind of nucleotide bases, and these PTCs are actually seen by the cells, and those RNA are basically degraded from the cell material. So this is the prominent way people actually go for removing or knockout procedure, and which is compared to knock in method. Knockouts are creating knockouts are simpler in nature, because this is the most prominent way, and probably the most of the enzymes are working towards this, and very small window is there for homologous repair mechanism and knock-in method, but you can enhance it with other homology sequences we can see in slides now. So these are the important enzymes which are functioning in bacteria, especially for non-homologous end joining, and especially we will see in multicellular eukaryote what are the important enzymes, especially Cu, heterodimers, then artamines and other enzymes like ligases and serosins. So this we'll see further. So in multicellular organism, you have first recruitment of co-dimeric proteins complexes which slide onto end of the double-stranded break, and it acts as a molecular scaffold for the recruitment of DNA repair enzymes. In particular, you have DNA protein kinases to form DNA protein kinases heterodimer here. And in second phase, you have DNA protein kinases is activated by binding to Cu and resulting in autophosphorylation, and it also phosphorates its important repair protein. For example, here artemisinin is Artemis is a nuclease enzyme that actually helps in the trimming of the ends of double-stranded breaks. So this is the trim. It creates the trims the single-stranded trails, and then it creates perfect ends for your double-stranded joining. Once you have this Cu proteins ligated on both the ends, then you have joining with the help of proteins like serunose and ligase 4. So this all other proteins. So what you see here is the starting material of DNA. You have A, B, C, D, E sequences, whereas when you end the whole process via ligation in double-stranded break with the help of non-homologous end joining, what you get in the end is imprecise joining. That means A, B, D, E is joined, and you have removal of certain sequences that is shown here. So C sequences are removed in this case. So that means the whole process is error prone and you do not get your perfect DNA. But in the end, the cell is trying to repair its DNA, and here you have the ligated DNA material. Okay. Now coming to your homology directed repair mechanism, which is less error prone compared to non-homologous end joining. So we'll see this method. And mostly this happens in the S phase when a sister chromatid is available for the repair system. So in this case, as well as in single stranded DNA, sorry, in this case, you have a double stranded break, and with the help of another enzyme, you have sequences which are resected. For example, 5' sequences are, chopped off with the help of nucleases enzyme, and then what you get at the end is 3' overhang. So this 3' overhang then goes invade into the sister chromatid and tries to repair its sequences, which are the broken sequences here. It tries to get the complementarity sequences from the sister chromatid, and it synthesizes new sequences with the help of sequence, and it synthesizes until that phase when it can actually recapture the sequences and get the complementarity sequences for its original overhang at the 3' end. So that means this sequences what it has been synthesized, newly synthesized, will come back and get a duplex make in this case. So this is the process of your homology directed repair mechanism, and in the end what you have the newly synthesized, and with the help of this template again you have with the help of polymerases you have newly synthesized on the top strand as well. So this is the method what you use in the homology directed repair mechanism, right? And finally they have a separation of the two, so there is no intermingling of two duplexes here, so there is no sister chromatid going into the other sequences of the DNA. That means the sister chromatid is shown here as in red, so this remains at its original position, and this is the your newly synthesized DNA where your template is the sister chromatid. So this is why I'm telling you this, because this is different in homology, homologous recombination cases. So you should remember this difference. Now coming to the how this long single stranded tail is known as this presynaptic tails, how this is generated, and this is important for your exam. You should pay attention here that how exactly these sequences are generated. We have also seen this in yesterday's class. So basically you have something called presynaptic step which is caused with the help of your recombination enzymes. So what you have is your repair enzymes called REC-BCD complexes in E. coli, and has this complexes has both nucleases as well as helicase function. So this complex is first attached to the double stranded breaks and moves along the DNA, unwinding and degrading the sequences here. When this complexes reaches the sky sequence, which occurs very frequently in E. coli cells, the nuclease activity decreases here, and it preferentially then degrades at the 5' strand. So yesterday I mentioned there is some kind of conformational change and it reduces the 3' nuclease activity, whereas the 5' nuclease activity remains similar. That means it basically now preferentially degrades at the 5' strand and leaving the long 3' overhang. So what you have here is the degradation here, and the 3' overhang is created. So once you have the 3' overhang that is created, this overhang is then bound by REC-A proteins. So that REC-A proteins binds here, and then this REC-BCD gets dissociated. And now you have the signal. So these are the sensors which gives you the signal that single stranded break has happened, or there is some kind of break which is taking place. And then it again recruits the downstream mechanism. For example, their kinase ATR, ATM kinases, and then you have mediator and effector proteins affecting that. So that was in the case of prokaryotes, and we will see how this system works in eukaryotes. So in eukaryotes, this double stranded break and then the single stranded 3' this overhang is generated with the help of this proteins called mRN complexes. So if you have mentioned, mRN complexes is loaded on the broken DNA ends, and then it recruits the homology directed repair enzymes, for example CDK, CTIP, and This with the help of then exonucleases in S phase, the cycling dependent kinases, which phosphorylates its neighboring partner CTIP, and this actually chops off your 5 prime resection is done. So here you have specifically 3 prime overhang, and this 5 prime is the chopped with the help of two different enzyme. One is called exo 1 and second is called DNA 2 nucleases, and this also helps in BLM helicases. This also helps the whole system to open under double standard. So there are two important enzyme. One is this one, and they all behave in 5 prime to 3 prime direction. So that means this is going from 5 prime to 3 prime direction. This is chopped off, and this is going from 5 prime to 3 prime direction. DNA nuclease. So this 5 prime end is chopped off. So now you have the open 3 prime stand in this case as well as in this case. So that was the case for creating 3 prime overhang. And now coming to homologous recombination. So here actually I think there is a some. So in homology directed recombination, what happens? You have a insertion into the sister chromatid, and then you have a new synthesized sequences at the end. Whereas in homologous recombinations, what happened? You have a creation of double stranded break. Then instead of sister chromatid, which is very similar to your template DNA here, the instead of sister chromatid in red, you have some homologous chromosome. So this homologous chromosome is not entirely similar to this target DNA shown in black. So that means you can see here this first chromosome DNA and double stranded sequences has A, B, C as a gene, if you can say so, whereas another homologous copy has A, B, C in small. So that means the sequences is not entirely similar, and when it repairs itself by finding the homologous as a partner, then it repairs as a different gene incorporated here. So this is called your gene conversion. So from B, capital B, to you have small b. So that is known as gene conversion. So that is the possibility in whole thing. So what we have seen so far is basically two method. One is non-homologous end joining and another is homology directed repair mechanism, and small about homologous recombination. So that means if you have this kind of gene, one is homology dependent repair where you result in the gene conversion, whereas in homologous recombination there are various kind of results is possible. So we have not seen so far the homologous recombination here, and I don't want to keep this as a portion for your syllabus. But we will see that what is the basic difference between homology dependent repair and homologous repair. Okay. So this is basically the end of the syllabus, especially for today's lecture. What we have seen is the nucleases, which breaks the double standard break. That means all our tools we can use to targetly break our DNA. And once you have the break, then this can be either single stranded break or double stranded break. If there is a single stranded break, the sensor actually recruits the ATR kinases, and if there is a double stranded break, this sensor protein recruits the ATM kind of kinases. And then this repair mechanism can happen with the help of two different mechanism, either non-homologous end joining or homology dependent repair mechanism. So homology dependent repair mechanism can happen with the help of sister chromatin or with the help of homologous strands. So this much we have seen in detail or in short what you can see. So now coming to the what is the difference between homologous recombination and repair enzyme. So I will just show one slide here. So basically, these are the two differences in homologous recombination and creating your uh, thing here. So this is homology dependent repair, where you get sister chromatin, you get the repair enzyme and redone here. Whereas in homologous recombination, you form something like this kind of arrangement. you have the synthesis going on, and also the second strand which is shown here, this is also acting as a template, and you have newly synthesizing DNA which can act in case of homologous recombination. And then when it is cutting, when you have the newly synthesized template form, this can cut in different ways. For example, either it can cut in horizontal ways where there is no exchange of DNA material, that means similar cutting that will give you non-recombinant DNA, that means similar DNA template. Whereas if you have this things are resolved in different manner. For example, here you have a horizontal cutting, and in this case you have vertical cutting in crossover positions. Then you get a recombinant kind of DNA, and this is various in different nature. So that is the main difference between your homology dependent and homologous dependent. And based on what kind of sequences are resolved, you get different ways of DNA. So these are not the part of your syllabus, but I just wanted to mention that these are the basic key points you should go and maybe revisit, because I am sure this has been covered in your molecular biology classes. So with this, I'm at the end of my lecture already, and I want to reiterate that we have seen these small topics today, and with this, I'm closing, and this is now open for questions actually. So if you have any questions, then we can discuss. So basically for your knock-ins, where you want to, give your system a particular cell at targeted site, you want to create some new sequences. So in that case, you go for homology directed repair mechanism, where you are exogenously providing your targeted sequences that you want to incorporate into the sequences. For example, here I'll come to. So for example, in this case, you have made a break with the help of, zinc finger nucleases or CRISPR, so to say. Once you create a nick here, so in cells, they will have certain mechanism to create some kind of homology directed repair mechanism. But if you also provide exogenous sequences that are matching to these sequences, for example, here, some corner sequences are matching, and then in between you want to provide sequences that should be inserted in this case. So by providing your DNA material, you can create a system where it is incorporated in between these sequences, but you have to be very careful that there should not be any mismatches, and the reading frame should be very similar what you want to get. And this kind of system people have used for creating knock-ins. That means you are preparing something new. And since CRISPR allows it to do it in the endogenous material, so a lot of like GFP or those protein sequences which are not usually present in the cells have been incorporated for visualization purpose, in even targeting your specific protein of interest with some kind of fluorophore or some kind of additional tag, and studying that particular protein in either microscopy or in different FRET sequences, or many different ways one can actually think of. So these are the mechanisms. So apart from what I have taught in whole genome editing classes, what when I was going through it, I also found small lectures by IIT Kanpur professor. I think I am forgetting his name. His lectures are on functional some proteins, and knock-ins and knockouts system in the mice has been explained properly in his system. So you can also have a look, and maybe all extra sources. Apart from this, especially for CRISPR, I wanted to upload, if I get time, I will upload Zhengfeng community lecture also, where he has very simplistically explained CRISPR system and its utilization in the process. Okay. So these are the things I think we have covered. Any questions so far? Pigu Brahma, are you there? No.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm there.
Okay. So are you able to get all the lectures? This is your first lecture, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So why you were sleeping until this time?
Ma'am, I was not even registered, and I didn't get any notification or mail.
No, why should you wait for no notification? Are you a big shot that you should wait for your notification only then you will start attending the classes? You should not wait. You already know that these things takes time, and from your previous experience you should have known.
Yes, ma'am.
How will you compensate for all 20 lectures now?
Uh,
See, if you don't want to, pass from this institute, then nobody can help you out. We are trying our level best to, do everything for each and every student, whether there is a backlog or where there. At day one, I called your name as well as Sridhari Darsari person. So both are enrolled in my class probably, and you both were not attending the lectures.
yes, ma'am. I think I will also contact him. I will inform him.
You didn't inform me. This was the first email you actually wrote to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyway, this is your call because we can do from only what we can do from our side, right?
Yes.
Any other question? Any? Okay, apart from question, is there anything you want to share or you want to tell regarding exam, regarding quiz, regarding term project, anything?
Right now, I don't have anything.
Okay, Pigu, you kindly see what are the dates and other things for your examination. Okay, we have one examination coming on 17th,
Yes,
that is this Saturday. You
yes,
should
ma'am.
prepare for that, and from lecture 1 till lecture 18, all portions will be involved. Basically, 13 to 18 lecture will have more weightage compared to already covered portions. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So accordingly, you prepare for your exam. And 10% is already gone for, and I don't have time to reconduct, especially for you again, a specific exam. Okay. So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
should try to cover from whatever other portions that will be carried out, and term project which is provided. Okay. You have to submit also the term project.
Yes, ma'am.
So, any other queries from any other students apart from Pigu? You can switch off your microphone. Yes, Shantini.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask something regarding the term project. So, before the final submission, once we write it primarily, can we send it to you to check once if we are doing things right or not?
What I would say, you can prepare what I can go some skeleton of your project. For example, what are the titles, what are the subtitles, within that subtitles, what you want to actually write. So basically, when you start writing, you want to create some kind of skeleton material, right? So those kind of skeleton material, if you can show, I can actually tell you. But I won't have enough time to, go through each and every details for that.
We'll check only the skeleton. That would do enough, I think.
Okay,
Thank you,
okay,
ma'am.
okay, welcome. Any anything you want to suggest, although this is the end, but if you can suggest like what was good, what was wrong, and what you want to improve, because I realize that most of you are concerned specifically for grading and quizzes and marks, right? So because I know it is competitive, but at the same time, you should also not, invest that much, what you say, thinking power. Rather, I would say, do your job and trust us that we will do our job properly. So don't worry about grading and other things. We will evaluate leniently, and accordingly we will also provide the quiz and other examinations. Okay, if you do not have any further questions, then can we uh, end the session, or should I?
Ma'am, what about
Yes,
tomorrow
Somik.
class?
Yes, Somik.
Tomorrow class?
Tomorrow you can take off actually. You can start preparing because this is the end. Tomorrow, because usually tomorrow would have been your exam, right? So tomorrow you have at least 2 hours if you're not getting any extra time. So my timing and extended one class. So 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 you can prepare for your examination. If you want me to be there, I will be here. And if you want to discuss anything, I can be available. But usually, if you want to take this as a off, I don't mind it, and you can actually start preparing for your upcoming exam that will be on 17th. So it's your call. Should I be there, or should you want me to be there? So raise hand. How many of you want to interact it tomorrow? Surbhi, you have a question, or you want to?
Yes, ma'am, I want to say something.
Yes,
Ma'am,
go ahead.
so on 17, we are going to have test for 2 hours, like 3 to 5.
Yes, so I explained it already yesterday. So the question paper will be for 1 hour. So that means you will be able to finish all your answer sheet within 1 hour. Okay. So 1 hour is extra. That means you can recheck your answer sheet, everything, and upload. If you have an internet problem and other problem, you can still have some time gap. That means you can upload and send it back to the same portal, and use this Teams itself to send back your answer sheets, not the Gmail, because last time I had a lot of trouble in getting your answer sheets in Gmail account. So one by one I had to confirm. So here you will also get the automatically confirmation that your answer sheets were sent. And thank you, Devadita, for informing me that this Teams is doing wonderful in assignment. Actually, getting the copy from assignment or sending assignment sheets. Is it clear, Surbhi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other issues? Okay. So I have taken your attendance. So tomorrow, let's actually decide it for tomorrow. You all want to take off tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I would say start preparing for your examination, and today we will keep it as a off. Okay. And if you have any doubts, anything, you can call me, you can write me, whatever ways, either on chat or specific Gmail, not Gmail, but this institute email ID, or directly in the chat box. Also, you can write. Okay. All right, then all the best. That is it from my side, and yeah, all the best for your examination. See you on then Saturday, 3.
Thank you, ma'am.